Okay, sweet. So hello everyone, I'm Leilani. I'm a second year medical student here at UCLA, and we have some other wonderful panelists that we will introduce right now. But really quickly, thank you everyone who joined, and I'll go ahead and share my screen a little bit about what is Prime logistically, so you can get the most out of the session, asking us more of the personal questions instead of just the what is Prime. So let me go ahead and share now. It's the same link that I posted, and I'll post it again right after this. So what is Prime? Basically, it's a 5-year dual degree program. So you still do the same classes with everybody else in your med school class. So those are the first 2 years right now in the curriculum. And then you have the years where you're going to be in the clinical setting, and those are the last 2 years. So in total, medical school is 4 years. And then the master's year is put in between your third and your fourth year. So in total, it's 5 years. And so the master's year is the really unique part, but there's other unique parts to the Prime program that we'll be talking about. Then how long it's been in existence. This is the 14th year. The UCLA Prime program is really established, but there's Prime programs at other UC campuses as well. What they look for in a candidate in general, as you'll hear from us, we're all from underserved backgrounds or care about underserved communities, and it's really the whole point of the program. And then more logistical questions of like, when did they receive my MCAT scores? What kind of successful DGSOM skills and whatnot, when are deadlines. And so all of that information is on here. So go ahead and look at it real quick before you ask us any of those sort of questions. And if it's not on there, obviously we'd be happy to go ahead and answer it here, but we just want to make sure that we make the most of our time since we do have amazing panelists and want to make sure that you hear from all of them. And yes, then more on interview years, and then on, sorry, not interview years, on master's year, interviews and master's year, and then other frequently asked questions, or if you want more logistical questions, like right from the program office, then you can go ahead and email them, but more of a personal us to us, you can go ahead and ask us here. And we'll be going through some of the questions that you all already submitted, and then leave enough time for Q&A at the end. And so that was the quick spiel there. And then let me go ahead and drop the link again. Okay, there we go. All right, so we'll go ahead and start off with introductions. And we'll have the panelists basically say their name and also their hometowns, their undergrad, their activities in undergrad, their gap years or other degrees, and how their journey ties in with Prime and advice. We'll keep it to about like 3 minutes each, but those are the general things that the audience wanted to know. So we can go ahead and start with Christian.
All right, thank you, Leilani, and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us here. I'm really excited to be here on this panel. To start off, my name's Christian Tejeda. I don't want to miss anything, and there was a lot of questions, so I want to hit them all. My hometown, I grew up in Orange County, in Fountain Valley, Huntington Beach area. I went to UCLA for undergrad, graduated in 2017, and I majored in psychobio there, double minored in global health and music history. I meandered a little. I came in actually thinking pre-law. I love humanities, English, and history. So I really explored that a lot in my coursework and stuff. And it wasn't until probably my junior year that I figured out that I wanted to do medicine, but that came through community service. That was kind of the bridge for me between my love of biology too and medicine. So I guess some of the activities I was involved in at UCLA, I think the most defining ones for me were all associated with music. So I was a founding member of an a cappella group called Resonance. I sang in the gospel choir and the chamber choir at UCLA, and I was also a music instructor for a community service organization called SLAM, where we worked with an underserved high school in the local area. So those experiences were really formative for me. And I was really able to explore one of my biggest passions. And I was also a member of the Student Alumni Association, so doing kind of ASB event planning type of work. And as far as health-related stuff, I was a member of the Mobile Clinic Project. I did kind of public health education work with Teach, and then I was a care extender, Global Brigades. Yeah, and I also was a resident assistant, so that's something that I did in undergrad. That was great for leadership building. And I took 2 years off, and I did an internship with AIDS Healthcare Foundation in Hollywood at the Hollywood Presbyterian Hospital, did some HIV and infectious disease clinical research. And then I kind of transitioned from that to working at DGSOM in clinical research with substance use disorder. So the populations I worked with in my gap years are the ones that, you know, I hope to work with one day. So I think that was a really good transition from undergrad. And kind of how my journey ties in with Prime, I think, you know, all of my experiences, especially the experience with mobile clinic, which is kind of the defining one that inspired me to want to, you know, be a physician, but not only a physician and a leader, an advocate for my patients, for underserved communities, to do social justice and advocacy work. It all came in that one experience that was really important to me, as well as the other ones. But I would say, you know, that really allowed me to see my mission. And yeah, I, you know, really excited now in medical school, second year, to continue my passions, you know, integrative medicine, global medicine, therapeutic arts. Those are all things I'm still really passionate about. And then lastly, one piece of advice I could give, you know, like myself, just don't be afraid to keep exploring your true passions, the ones that you come into this journey with. And, you know, the things that you do on your journey toward medicine don't all have to be, you know, health related. You know, most of my experiences weren't. And I think you can still explore those passions, and they're really an outlet for you to take care of yourself and you know, surround yourself with people that energize you, support your dreams, your mission, and forks in your path that you may encounter, and you may take a path that you didn't expect to take. Those often serendipitously end up being great opportunities for you to grow. And that's something that was really important in my journey, not knowing what I wanted to do at the beginning, but I was kind of led on a path that brought me here. And I think it was the right path for me in the end. So that's what I would say.
That was perfect. Thank you so much, Christian. So again, Christian's in his second year, and now our next second year, and I'm just going by alphabetical order. So we have Rintu coming up, or Rigo, sorry. We have Rigo first coming up.
Everyone can hear me? Yeah, perfect. Okay, hi everyone. My name is Rigoberto Perez Hernandez, or Rigo Perez for short. As Delaney said, I'm a second year medical student at the Prime-LA program. I'm originally from Watsonville, California. You've heard of Driscoll's Berries, that's where it comes from. And I'm a first generation college graduate from Cornell University. I graduated class of 2017 from the College of Human Ecology. I was a human biology, health and society major. And I'm gonna go just give you a little information, I guess, background of why I decided to get involved in medicine. But I was, like I said, mentioned before, first generation, grew up in the city of Watsonville, very underserved, very under-resourced, medically underserved. And I grew up as a translator for my family. So early on, I was able to translate and see the interactions with patients, physicians growing up. So having that exposure early on and responsibility allowed me to see that. My parents also work in healthcare. My mom's CNA, my dad's dietary aide. So I saw them working with their patients, saw the utmost care that they had with their patients. Is really, I guess, early on exposure primed me to become or be interested in medicine. And just seeing the disparities in Watsonville. I mean, a lot of the farm workers, they produce a lot of their berries, but oftentimes they don't get to eat what they produce, you know, so that's kind of ironic. So early on, again, I saw the disparity and the need for, to, you know, address those health disparities in underserved areas. But as I mentioned before, I went to Cornell, and I was very involved with many opportunities. I mean, you go into this different environment. This is the first time I left the West Coast, you know, the East Coast. Not only was it very cold, but you were just exposed to different opportunities, you know, different walks of life. It's very beautiful to, you know, just, you know, go and be able to interact with different people from different areas. But I was involved particularly with my fraternity. With I also created an organization on campus called the Science Organization of Latinos, or SOL, which means sun, basically to increase representation of minorities in science. I mean, there is a need, obviously there's a need now for URM and you know, across the nation. So I saw that with a professor on campus who sought to create an organization. And I guess I just took advantage of every opportunity that came to me on campus. I was involved in many other things. I was involved with the Latino Studies program. I raised over $10,000 for a campaign in a short 1 month. We did a lot of things. I mean, I could go on, the list goes on for things I've done, but I think generally, like, the advice I would give you all, and just very briefly, is like, get involved early on and find what really motivates you, and what also stimulates your like curiosity or like general passions for medicine or for anything else. I was also very busy in the summers. I just couldn't stay at home and I'd obviously do absolutely nothing. I was involved. The first summer I did a summer medical dental education program, now called the Summer Health Professionals Education Program, or SPEP. I was at Columbia University, and that was essentially the first exposure to the clinical setting. And then I did clinical research, breast cancer research after that. And then I was abroad, fine-tuning my medical Spanish in Chile through the Harvard MERT program. So I was really allowed me to get exposure to medicine. But yeah, that's my journey. Just general advice: be busy, and then don't be scared to reach out to upperclassmen. I know I did that early on in college, and not even now. But yeah.
Thank you, Rigo. That was great. And now we'll go on to Rintu.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Leilani. My name is Rintu Saju. I am an MS2 here at UCLA, also part of the PRIME program. And just a brief overview of my journey and my hometown. I'm here in Southeast LA, but originally I was born and raised in India. I lived there for about 10 years. So a lot of my earlier experiences growing up in India is what kind of fruited, I guess, the passions for medicine, which were further solidified through my experiences in undergrad. So going on to undergrad, I went to UC Irvine, for my undergrad. Did 4 years there, graduated in 2018, studied exercise physiology, and did a minor in public health as well. For specific activities that I was engaged at UC Irvine, I think coming in, I was very unsure if I wanted to do things in the biosci realm or if I wanted to do more things in the public health realm. And a lot of my activities originally were very much in the public health realm because I think there was strong passions or calling that went that way. And in high school, I did something called Model United Nations, which I also continued in undergrad. And it's basically mock simulation of the UN. And it really inspired me to kind of think about global health from a perspective of like discipline as well as delegation. So wanted to see how international governance works. So initially I was very much involved in the global health realm, did work with an organization called the Global Health Research, Education and Translation Program at UC Irvine, and got involved in that, continued my Model UN journey, both at UC Irvine as well as I worked for the International Model United Nations Association at the time for a couple of years. And then I think one summer I was very much kind of lost, I would say, if I should go down the public health realm or do medicine. And it was that summer that I did the Summer Urban Health Fellowship through Harvard UCLA with two phenomenal, amazing mentors, Dr. Pula and Dr. Nados. Highly, highly recommend this. This was the defining moment for me to kind of understand that you don't need to define public health and medicine and biology, for that matter, as two exclusive items, but rather that these merge in so many different beautiful ways, and that true medicine really combines these two ideas about, understanding biological and molecular processes, and then using that knowledge to inform activism and community engagement. And I think that's where I found true beauty and true inspiration, which continued through a lot of other works around free clinics and research, as well as in doing a course in disparities in medicine. So kind of just a quick summary of some of the activities that I was involved in undergrad. My number one advice, I would say, is that medicine, especially in pre-med life, we tend to have this toxic, I would say, checklist of items that we feel like we have to do. And I think my number one advice would be that you have to change the narrative. Don't tell yourself that you have to do this or you have to do this or you should do this. That you should change that narrative to really say that I want to do this. And that want should really be stemming from your why power as to why this matters for you. And, like Christian said, explore your passions, because those passions are what's gonna really inspire and inform your why power, and then help you decide if career in medicine and what fields of medicine really, drive your mission and purpose in life forward.
Thank you so much for that, Rintu. And now those conclude our MS2s. I'm also an MS2, but I'll just go at the end with what time we have. And now we'll go on to Boris.
Hi everyone, my name is Boris Pavich. I'm also one of the master's students pursuing an MPH in epidemiology, but we'll talk about all that a little bit later. So I'm from Fresno, California. I was born and raised there, but my family is originally from Serbia, Eastern Europe, or part of former Yugoslavia for those that might know. I also went to a CSU like Alex. I went to a CSU Fresno, where I studied biology and then minored in Spanish and chemistry as well. I guess some like the more meaningful activities that I did while in undergrad. So I started, I gained a lot clinical exposure really early on through scribing in a local emergency department. I think that was one of my, other than some like volunteering in some health clinics in high school, that was one of my first big exposures to clinical medicine, and also seeing a lot of various patient populations within Fresno. In addition to like scribing, I also was a coach, kind of like Alex mentioned, but I was coaching water polo back in my local high school. And I can't emphasize enough, like doing activities that you're passionate about, coaching either football or water polo or whatever, doesn't really relate to medicine, but directly, or isn't like a classic pre-med checklist, but it does help you develop certain skills. And I think it's also important for, at least for me, it was important to be present in my high school and give back to that community, and hopefully inspire some other kids to pursue higher education and medicine in general, just through kind of like one-on-one mentorship through coaching. I also was really involved with various like global health programs through Fresno State, did like a few community projects in Fiji, and then also studied abroad and did an internship, medical internship in Costa Rica for a semester while in college, and helped me further improve my medical Spanish to the point that I was able to interpret and translate back when I came back to Fresno for a big patient population in the emergency department, but also gave me a little bit more exposure and perspective of how global health can be applied both to help solve international problems, but also domestic problems as well. That's kind of how I got passionate and interested in Prime, in order to, one, work with like the underserved community back in Fresno, but also develop certain skills in order to become a leader and in advocating for vulnerable patient populations. I guess the biggest advice, similar to what's been mentioned by a lot of the panelists, pursue whatever you're passionate about and don't worry about that standard like pre-med checklist. I think sometimes people get into the habit of trying to build an impressive looking resume by getting involved with a bunch of things, but not committing a lot of time. And I think that shows eventually when you're applying and being interviewed. It's always going to be more important to do what you're passionate about and give it 100% like Alex mentioned. And that's going to help with applications and all that, but also with developing great relationships with your patients when you can talk about something that you're really truly passionate about. Yeah.
Great, thank you. And then now, last but not least, and we're very lucky to have her because she's super busy, Michelle.
Hi everyone, I'm Michelle. I am a fourth year med student. I finished my master's last year, so happy to talk about that as well. I am from Walnut Creek, California, which is a Bay Area suburb, and I went to UC Davis for undergrad. I did neurobiology, physiology, and behavior, and a Chicano studies minor. In undergrad, I kind of dabbled around a little bit, but the activities that were most important to me were going abroad to Oaxaca, Mexico. That was like a clinical, a clinical abroad experience, and that was what really actually got me interested in being pre-med in the first place. And then when I got back to Davis, I joined Clínica Tepati, which is like a student-run health clinic in Sacramento for mainly Spanish-speaking population, uninsured, underinsured, and there I got to work with medical students. Oh, me? Oh, sorry, I'm sharing a room with other folks. Tricky. And I also worked at the LGBT Resource Center, which I put on a bunch of like weekly programs, was part of did a peer education program. And then the last last endeavor that was important to me was being part of the disability advocacy group. We were a bunch of students trying to advocate for better accessibility on campus, like creating ramps and creating safer crosswalks, because this was a big bike friendly campus, but it wasn't so great for like blind folks trying to get to class. Let's see, after graduating, I worked for City Year, which is an AmeriCorps program in DC. And then after that, I did a post-bac at UCSF. And in the meantime, while I was applying, I was doing a lot of tutoring and teaching. And then how does my journey tie in with Prime values? For me, it was all about health disparities. I saw it in my upbringing with a lot of my family members having disabilities. And I saw it also in my immigrant family. So I wanted to join a place that would not only teach me the medicine part of being in medical school, but also highlight advocacy and health disparities. And advice I would give is emphasizing what other folks have said, which is, and what has been told to me, which I still find useful to this day, is you don't have to do a lot of different activities. It's better to do fewer and do them well and invest a lot of time in them and show that you are a leader and you can, and that you are capable of, leading a bunch of other folks, putting on programs, show people what you got out of an experience. It's fine if you are a sole member of a program, but if you don't take on a leadership role, it's harder to show people what you are capable of.
Great, that's awesome. Thank you, Michelle. And now I'll go ahead and share mine for a little bit, these last 2 minutes, and then we'll go ahead and move on to our next question. So my name's Leilani again. I was born in Mexico and I grew up in Fresno, California. I moved to the US when I was about 5 years old. So just being in this country is like a little political revolution because I was undocumented. And so I've really cared about underserved communities ever since forever, and seeing my family members not have access to care and wanting to really change that and really help them. So it's really close to me and made sense to also apply to Prime and incorporate being a doctor, especially for underserved communities. I went to UC Berkeley for undergrad, go Bears, and I really loved it there. I majored in molecular and cell biology and minored in global poverty and practice. I spend a lot more time talking about global poverty because obviously that's what I really care about. And I did research when I was there in toxicology because of all the pesticides that affect us in the Central Valley. I also did TEDx Berkeley, so like TED Talks, but at Berkeley, huge platform, 2,000 people, to try to really bring up and uplift and give a platform for voices that aren't usually heard. And I also coached, or I taught little kids how to swim, and just did a variety of different activities that I found were unique to what I wanted to do. And so I definitely recommend that, like everybody else already said. After UC Berkeley, I took a gap year. I went back to Fresno so I could work with high school students who are in a pipeline program, the Doctors Academy, and I found that super rewarding. Also, in undergrad, during my gap year, I got the opportunity to go to Germany and talk about diversity there. And then in undergrad, I was able to go to Nicaragua, and that was really great. So getting involved with global health stuff, also doing that here now. And like I said, it ties in with Prime's values because of everything I believe in. So my advice is keep going with what you believe in. I know imposter syndrome is super common. So just know that you are really needed in the space, especially if you're genuinely committed to underserved populations. And there's some people who necessarily won't understand your mission, but other people will really be needing you and really wanting you, and really excited to have you all here. So now for our next section of this, we'll have 10 minutes of why Prime-LA, and we'll let the MS2s mainly talk about this because after these 10 minutes, we'll talk about what's the master's year exactly. So why Prime-LA, and it could be whoever wants to answer first between Christian, Rigo, and two.
Yeah, I can take it first again. Yeah, so why Prime? I mean, Prime was absolutely my 100% my dream program. Once I began considering medicine, I want to start by saying it like this answer, you know, it can't, for me, it can't not be really personal. Like I believe blue and gold. I love UCLA. I was the guy that lost my voice at like every football and basketball game. I love this community. So I think that part of it was so important for me when I was applying here specifically. This community is my second home. It's my family. And it just means the world, you know, to be able to come back here and do my medical training here. So I really it was a pleasure to, you know, even have the opportunity to apply here. And that's what I'll start by saying that, you know, and, you know, as other folks have said, you know, especially what you said, Rinchu, about how important it is when you realize that you could tie like a scientific foundation to, you know, that knowledge base to social issues, social justice, community, the needs of the community. And I think the Prime program does that. That's core to what Prime is all about. And I think that's why it resonated with me, the mission of Prime. And I think I find myself pretty mission driven. So I definitely gravitated toward it. And I think, you know, the Prime program across the state is incredible. And those are definitely my top, at the top of my list. So if I can just go to the most rewarding thing about Prime, I think just having the family and the community and the support has been invaluable. And, you know, we have big SIBs and little SIBs. We have an incredible amount of resources, workshops, lectures, and check-ins monthly, where we learn so much about the work that, you know, we hopefully will be doing soon. And just that each member of like my cohort and other cohorts, they're a sounding board, you know, and we really care about these issues, you know, and it comes to a visceral level, especially right now. And I think whatever your issue is, or the things that you care about, you have someone that you can have productive and difficult discourse about those things. And not only that, but you can work together to, you know, create change and actually act to solve some things. You know, we did a year-long food pharmacy community project. The Prime cohort always does a year-long project in the first year. So that's what we were able to do. So that's one example. But yeah, love Prime so much.
I can go next. Yeah, so why Prime for me? I think kind of going back to that point, right? So first, I heard of Prime for.
Oh no, I think you froze.
Prime students back then during their first and second year, we do a summer project usually in medical school. And a lot of them, medical students, Prime students, were involved in our project. And that's what really motivated me to get started about thinking about medicine from a social perspective and not necessarily from a purely scientific perspective. And as I mentioned, like at UC Irvine, literally the campus for public health and biology were in opposite corners. And it felt like they were treated as these exclusive ideologies, yet in reality, for me, I think through the experiences working in communities like Watts and Wilmington, that's when I really identified that they don't have to be mutually exclusive. Rather, true medicine, again, is being able to be informed by those metabolic processes and then using that knowledge to then impart social change and advocate for the needs of your patients. And I think knowing that and being inspired by that experience, I think that's what really inspired me to apply for a program like Prime. As Leilani mentioned earlier, Prime isn't unique to UCLA. It's a program that all the UCs have. But I think what's unique about UCLA is its mission about Prime. I think all the UCs have a unique mission on how they think about what Prime looks like for them. At UCLA, our Prime is Prime-LA, LA standing for not UCLA, but rather leadership and advocacy. And for me, I think those were two important skills that I wanted to learn, and then impart those skills and knowing that skill as a doctor to help communities of different backgrounds, whether it be urban underserved or immigrant, populations, whatever it may be. I think two skills that are core to that is leadership and advocacy, and being able to learn that is super valuable. And we were able to learn that through our leadership seminars, through our advocacy seminars, through having like-minded individuals in our Prime family. And for me, that's probably the most rewarding thing. UCLA is a big school. If for a medical school, we have about 175 to 180 students, and to have a pre-formed cohort of 18 students there as your family right from the get-go. We actually have a prime summer where we spent about 4 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks, just having having the time of our life and bonding at the same time and learning and working on our project. It's quite honestly like having that family right from the get-go and not feeling isolated or intimidated by this large community, but rather having that smaller community always there as your home base, I thought was very, very valuable. In terms of scholarship, and I'm sure the upperclassmen can talk a little bit more about this, is that we do get our 4th year covered in medical school, and just because we do an extra master's year. So I think that's one of the opportunities that we have here at UCLA at Prime. And Prime office is always looking out for us. They're always sending us scholarship opportunities to make sure that we're taken care of.
Nice, thank you. And talking about scholarships, now on to Rigo.
Yeah, so there's a comprehensive list. I mean, there's so many opportunities to get like funding through UCLA. But I guess let me just touch on why I chose Prime, and then I'll talk about the scholarships. But I think ultimately, whether it's any medical school or just Prime specific, I think we're focusing on being great clinicians. But for me, particularly why I decided to apply to Prime was because, as Christian alluded to, is I want to be physicians and. So I obviously want to see and treat, patients, particularly underserved or under-resourced areas, but I want to be more than that. I want to be able to not only translate epidemiological research into policies and interventions that a lot of our patients can use, right? So you're focusing on treating individual patients, but at the same time translating that to macroscopic interventions, right? So like I said, for example, fitness challenges across the United States, or guidelines for obesity and diabetes, right? Those are done primarily through a lot of research. It goes on behind the scenes, and that's one of my intentions that I hope to do as a clinician, not only to treat patients at the individual level, but also macroscopic. And in a way that gives back to my city, to Watsonville, right? Like obviously can't affect everyone at Watsonville. I could affect people individually, but by doing so, by working at the macroscopic level, I can affect or create policies that could indirectly kind of affect my people back home, right? So I'm giving back in that way. And having the ability to do an extra year for additional training through the master's program, what sold me to Prime. I mean, obviously it's back home in California, which is where I grew up in, but I think just the mission of Prime and the ability to just, intertwine that curriculum in your program is just, it was a done deal for me. I was just sold, and it was just a matter of, when it's going to happen. And I ultimately decided to apply at first. I was a little scared, to be honest, but I had a talk with a counselor, and I said, hey, look, I want to apply to this program, but there's only 18 spots. And he stopped me and he said, no, wait, there's only 17 spots left because one of them belongs to you. And so I decided to apply, and here I am, right? So I thought I was going to get in, but I made it, and it's been a great 2 years so far. But I think we're very fortunate here that we get that training, and also we also have opportunities for funding, resources that we could tap into. So UCLA does have a lot of merit-based scholarships, and chime in everyone if I miss any of them. But there's, like I said, there's an exhaustive list. Primarily, I'm talking on behalf of the LA Care Scholarship Program. That's you get your med school. It's all covered. You get a stipend as well for living expenses and for groceries and stuff. The Geffen scholarship as well is also awarded to many students. And I should say these are available for just a general population, like students coming to UCLA. But I think a lot of Prime students end up getting the awards because, we're just very accomplished individuals, and our mission is to help people that are underserved. And there are also many scholarships, the Leaders of Tomorrow. There's all the Dean's Distinguished Scholarship. There are many of them that I could. I'm sure there's a link that we could post in the chat, but those are the two main ones you could, or the two main ones, Geffen and LA Care, and then Leaders Tomorrow is another one. And I think also Ritu mentioned that coverage for the master's year, the fourth year, that's also offered through the Prime office. But I don't know if I missed anything in terms of scholarships, but.
That's great. Thank you so much, Rigo. And then talking about that master's year, we'll go ahead and go on to our next section. So what is the master's year? What kind of opportunities are there for masters, for research, and what's the value of having this additional degree?
Okay, so just to give a little bit of background, you can so as part of the Prime program, it's a dual degree program. So you get your MD and then your master's in pretty much whatever you want. Most popular is a public health degree. People have also gone on to do business degrees, social work. You can do a master's really in anything. And the master's year is typically done after your third year clinical rotations, but I've also seen people do them after second year for whatever reason. Prime is very, very flexible. I did my master's year in London, actually. So you could, on that note, actually, you can also do your master's anywhere. It doesn't have to be at UCLA. I got my public health degree, and touching on the value of an additional degree, I've noticed that people who are not in dual degree programs in medical school are taking time off anyway to do master's years. And I think that it's because residency programs and just actually like future employers see a master's degree as a sort of like a stamp of you taking a year to learn more about advocacy, learn more about like how to really analyze research, different critical thinking skills that are not taught in medical school. And I think that it's always, always, always a plus to have. And it's nice that it's sort of incorporated into our curriculum, and that a year, essentially, they used to pay for the master's year, but now it's the fourth year. So you can think of it as a free master's. Prime cover the cost of masters, even if it's in the UK. So they cover the cost of the fourth year of medical school. So not the actual master's year, but however, when I went to the UK, they still took my FAFSA and everything. So it was sort of like I was going to school in the US.
I think the master's also, in addition to developing a skill set of actual like skills of either analyzing data or how to implement certain public health measures, it also gives you a whole year or two, depending on how long of a master's you take, to explore other things that you might be interested in regarding medicine and public health. You have more access to research opportunities, interventions, and again, deciding what sort of specialty you want to practice. So you have a little bit of extra time to decide. So you have the opportunity to do a summer research project between your first year and second year of medical school. And a lot of people do it locally, but you can also do a global research project, which I did. So I was in Guatemala for 8 weeks, studying the barriers of access of surgical care for congenital defects of the nervous system in the pediatric population there. You also have the opportunity to do a lot of global health stuff during your during your master's year, either through your degree, getting like a global health certificate, or studying in a different country, kind of like Michelle did. And then during your fourth year of medical school, you can do some international rotations as well during like the second half of the school year. So there's definitely plenty of opportunities to get involved.
So we have another question in the chat. How do you choose which degree you get for your master's? And I know Michelle has to leave at 12:55, right? Okay, so I'll let you go ahead and say this one first.
Yeah, sorry folks, I gotta go to clinic. I mean, it's really up to your interests. I knew that I wanted to study more. I was actually deciding between a business one and public health, and then I just thought maybe my personality is more suited for public health one, and I could maybe learn more about advocacy that way. I don't know, because I've never been to business school, but I'm sure you could still have the advocacy component. It's really, really up to you what you want to do for your master's, and you can, that's why I would suggest talking to master's students or older students now, or, you know, as soon as you get to med school, talking to folks who have done it in the past and kind of just getting a sense of what they got out of it, what they got out of their master's program, and if that is what you want for your career, and if it will help you meet your goal. I think most master's programs, correct me if I'm wrong, everyone, but they will take your MCAT score.
Except for an MBA, you have to take another standardized test.
Okay.
So for MBA, I actually studied for the GMAT over this past summer between MS1 and MS2. So you could, for MBA specifically, you could do either the GRE or the GMAT, and they're considered equally. And yeah, from there you can apply anywhere. And if you prefer 1 year versus 2 year, you can look into that. But there is a program for MBA, it's called the consortium, where you can apply kind of like Prime, but for MBA programs. They're promoting diversity in the field of business. So that's a good option if you're considering that as well.
Sorry, saw a question about overcoming fears of misspeaking or feeling that you don't know enough when engaging in advocacy. Such a great question. I feel like, especially now, we might hold back if we're not, I guess, quote unquote, politically correct, or if we feel like we might have offended someone. I think the number one way that we can overcome is through engaging in positive dialogue with each other, and educating yourself about the different issues that are relevant in our communities right now, and how to model from others. I think, for example, like Leilani is like someone that I feel like speaks so eloquently. So for me, like I always like look up to her and see, you know, how she phrases certain things and kind of learn from that process. I would say engage in those dialogue and engage with others, engage in someone that you feel like is very well versed in this, and kind of mimic what kind of dialogue and how they phrase certain things, and ask them why they phrase it that way, and be able to learn from each other that way.
Yeah, one of the things that being in the United States, it's a cultural mosaic, right? There's so many peoples, like I said, from very different walks of life. But being a part of the Prime program, I mean, just being a part of UCLA in general, right? You get places, so many like-minded individuals where you can engage these dialogues, right? Sometimes they're very like tough conversations that need to be addressed or need to have. But I think once you're involved with like a cohort of 18 people that just think the same, think similar, or have similar backgrounds, that's a start, right? So once you get together and just talk, and you just create like a bond and a sense of understanding and a sense of camaraderie, then together you can just, you know, fill in those gaps of knowledge, and they further expand your knowledge base. So then you're able to, you know, appropriately advocate if you, yeah, but I think it's just being a part of the program with just like-minded individuals just really helps you, like I said, understand and further advocate for people that sometimes, you know, not necessarily are from your background, but it's just being able to like acknowledge that and then willing to learn appropriately is the first step. A good question.
I see there's a question regarding like debating between a master's in clinical research and more in public policy. I'm not directly doing like a master's in clinical research, but master's in epidemiology is a little bit more data driven and data centric rather than doing a public policy or health policy and management. And my kind of like the decision tree I had was I wanted to gain, the reason why I pursued the epi degree over health policy and management was I wanted to gain specific skills, kind of like Alex mentioned, that would help me better understand how to analyze data and results and manipulate data in order to then use that information to better advocate for specific vulnerable populations in order to help obtain either resources or funding for certain public health measures. And I thought that doing a 1 year epi degree, I would learn a lot of those statistical analysis skills that might be challenging to learn on your own, where through being in Prime and engaging with your other classmates and taking other like elective courses, you can develop other skills in public policy and advocacy that can supplement the kind of more hard data-driven skills. So hopefully that helps.
Nice. And we also have a question on the qualities that med schools are looking for, and what advice to show that we cared about underserved communities through activities. So maybe you could answer that one. And then there's another one though, on any nonprofit organizations that are currently open to students. I know we're in COVID times, but if anybody knows of anything, and if not, our larger Med Mentors group does have more resources, especially specific to UCLA students. So you can go ahead and reach out to us via the Med Mentors form that I'll post right now too. So 2 questions. 1, any opportunities that we know of? 2, how did you show that you care about underserved communities, or what other traits do you think are important?
I feel like, I mean, definitely read up on the website. I know it's like a terrible answer, but check the website because Prime has listed out the mission and values of what Prime-LA is about and what we look for in applicants. So definitely check that out. But I think a larger, I guess, internal conflict that I've always had in undergrad is a lot of my colleagues and peers would work in underserved communities or free clinics, but it's mainly for like application purposes and not necessarily a genuine passion for underserved communities. So I think doing these isolated events of working and saying, oh, I work for the underserved, so I don't know, like showing that isn't necessarily truthful or will come across that way. I think if you show consistency in all of your activities, and this is something that you're passionate about and willing to learn more about, that I feel like would yield a better fruitful engagement in a program like Prime, being able to then showcase that you're truly passionate about this.
Yeah, and any other I know we're down to our last minute, so last minute advice that our panelists would like to share. And I know for the person in the chat that asked about the other opportunities, you can always ask questions to our larger Med Mentors form, and someone with like specific relevant experiences will reach back out to you. So I'll go ahead and post the link for that too. But last minute thoughts from our panelists.
I can go real quick. Kind of related to that last question, I think overall my advice when you're getting to that point where you want to talk about your journey, tell stories. That's the biggest thing that worked for me. Tell anecdotes in response to the questions that you're getting. Let the reader in on a specific experience with a specific individual you may have worked with or a community you may have worked with and its impact on you. Make it personal, and really try to paint a unique picture of that experience and why it was important to you. One piece of advice.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what Christian said, 100%. I think also adding to that, I think you need to know, your core values, right? Like what you stand for, essentially. Like obviously it has to do with like serving those that come from under-resourced or underserved areas, but then, what really sets you apart from any other applicant, right? Whether it's like you speak a different language or you just, I don't know, like you just give a lot of yourself to others, that you dedicate, one of the, I guess not want to say criteria, but one of the characteristics of many physicians that they give themselves to others, right? You put yourself before others, and that's, if that's something that is really, you demonstrate through application, and that's something you should highlight when you're applying and interviewing ultimately through Prime. But I think just know your core values, know them very well, and know your application very well. Every little letter that you wrote, because yeah, everything's fair game. But we're very friendly people in terms of the interviewing process and stuff. So yeah, you're all here to help the next generation of professionals in healthcare. So yeah, but I think those are general tips that I would kind of disseminate to you all.
Nice. Thank you so much for that. So thank you again to the panelists, everybody that came, and thank you to everybody from the audience that listened and asked questions, and feel free to reach out whenever. So thank you.